Hello, I'm William Perky, and I'm one of the co-founders of something called Invitational Education, along with Dr. Betty Siegel and Dr. John Novak and others. We've been working for several decades on how to develop a school that truly is welcoming. The people, places, policies, programs, and processes, that everything adds to the environment in which children are trying to grow. And so I want to welcome you to this tape. I think you'll find it helpful to show in your classrooms, your schools, because you will be seeing some of the most inviting schools and most inviting people. You'll learn a lot from what you're about to see. So welcome aboard, and thank you for watching. Back in 1971, way before you were born, I wrote a book entitled Self-Concept and School Achievement. And after that book came out, people asked me, okay, Dr. Perky, you've convinced us that how people feel about themselves are important. What do we do about it? How do you motivate a child? How do you turn the child on? How do you make him feel better about it? How do you build self-esteem? But they're all doing two things. That's a doing two concept. And then I came across a book by Sidney Girard. Sidney was a colleague of ours at the University of Florida. And he wrote this passage: there are no intellectual, emotional, physical, or psychological barriers that you and I cannot transcend, provided we share the company of people who believe certain things about us and who invite us to share in those beliefs. And from that beginning, a group of us took off. We began to pollinate back and forth, share ideas. Dr. Siegel and Dr. Novak and many others began to join together. In 1982, we organized the International Alliance for Invitational Education with 12 members at Lehigh University. And from that very humble beginning, we've gradually grown. Now we're over 700 members in about 17 countries.
Invitational education is based on some basic assumptions that we consider very important to ethical leadership. And the first assumption is trust. And we think that that's a democratic process of people coming together in a collaborative way. In fact, we use this term often at our university, that we're all together better if we're all together. And you can play with that idea in a lot of different ways. But it's important to be trusting and collaborative and cooperative. The second assumption is one of respect. And when we talk about respect, we think in terms of it being that all people are able and valuable and responsible. And they should be treated that way. And they deserve to be treated that way. The third basic assumption is really about optimism. I think it was Churchill who said that pessimists curse the wind, optimists believe the winds will change, and realists adjust the sails. I rather like that. And I think that I would rather be a realistic optimist than an optimistic realist, because I really believe that optimism captures the essence of that all people have untapped potential if we but find the way to invite them to offer up their truths, their individuality, their special strengths. And then the fourth, I think, assumption is one that's based on intentionality. And intentionality means that you go with clearness of effort and intentionally create a climate in which that you really look at the people, the place, the programs, the policies, and the processes all together. And we're referring to this now as alignment. And alignment means that you put them in place and that each has an importance in the development of an institution. And so we use the metaphor of the starfish, which I think is an interesting one. The starfish is a wonderful metaphor because it opens up an oyster shell very quickly. And I like to think that it does that by putting pressure in 5 different points. And so when we think of those, the people in an institution, of course, are the important ingredient. But they must be inviting to reach out to others, to invite them to see themselves in those areas that we just described. The second area is the place. The place must be as inviting as the people. This is a hospitable place. Hong Kong is a hospitable place. This conference is a hospitable place. It invites us to interact in the most significant way. And the third level is the programs. How do the programs fit? Are the programs congruent with what we think would bring about the best development in each of us that's involved in the program? The next level is the policies. Are the policies facilitated? Do they encourage rather than to restrict? And then the processes. So when you think in terms of the people, the place, the programs, the policies, and the processes working together, then you intentionally create the kind of caring school. All over the world, and I'm traveled all over the world, I'm finding that there's a real need for meaning to be assigned to life. People are hungry for meaning. And so I think the invitational model is one that is very related to quality of life. And so as we think in terms of the meaning of life, I think we have something to say to the world that's more than a ticket to a trade, more than a collection of courses, and that through invitational education, focusing on the worth of the beings, that it is a time for us to be going back to the meaning. I've been reading about a book called Remembrance Rock, and I use it a lot I think it's by Carl Sandburg, an American writer. And he asked the hero in the book to go to a rock every year and to sit on the rock and ask 3 questions. And the questions are, who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? And then my minister said he should have asked the 4th question, which is, what is the meaning? And I think that's very important. And I've added lately another question, which is, how do I matter? So I think the Alliance is moving into a phenomena that can be a force in the world, that we will assign meaning to our work, and that we will think in terms of how this reaches out into the community. And tomorrow we're going to be talking, the 3 of us, Dr. Perky and Dr. Novak and I, and Jack Schmidt, we're going to be talking about that we will move the Alliance, I think, in significant ways to how we further the betterment of society, that we work for the common good, and that we are not just a theory, we're a theory of practice, but more than that, I think we're a movement. And I think the movement propels us to really think in terms of how we use ourselves, not just as educators in schools, but how we use ourselves as educators, as, I think, stewards of place. We must be stewards of the world. And being stewards of the world, it seems to me we must have a social consciousness, and that we would want to have not only good things happen to us in schools, but that we reach into the communities that we serve. And then that civic engagement can be a very significant part of what the Alliance does in the future.
When we found within invitational education, there are 3 levels which people adopt our ideas. Some groups like invitational education because it gives a nice spirit of renewal, that they get excited about ideas and reminded about what's really important in education. And they like that. Second level is when people apply our ideas systematically to the people, places, policies, programs, and processes. And that takes on a lot. There's a third level we call leadership. And that's when the schools become a beacon school. People from all over the world will come visit schools because of the inviting things they're doing. And here in Hong Kong, at Creative Primary School, just wonderful things are happening. And we've had people come from other parts of the world to visit Creative Primary School. So these are some of the key points that are happening. And several other schools within Hong Kong are really doing this spirit. So they become leaders now in the world, and people coming from different parts of the world to see what they're doing. 2 interesting obstacles. Number 1, people say, it's too easy. Number 2, people will say, it's too hard. Interesting. The too easy, people say, oh, it just means smiling and being nice. They say, no, 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 no. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's all about the sort of things that you set up. When we explain in more detail what you can do, people go, oh, that's way too hard. But we tell people, if you don't do it, our problems are going to get much more difficult. So the idea is,
Can we find ways to not be underwhelmed, but not to be overwhelmed? We have to find the right whelm level to be able to handle the situations we face.